Thanks a lot. Thanks, Neil. And I'm really excited to have the opportunity to be on the Portal to Ascension Network. So thank you all for tuning in. Just give me a thumbs up, if you're type hello or something in the chat room, and just let us know that you're here and that you're hearing everything okay. So I know some of the people tuning in have maybe never connected with me before, never connected with Portal to Ascension before. And also I've got, quite a few friends showing up as well that are familiar with my work. Well, I want to invite all of you to just connect in energetically with a field that we are holding together, a sacred portal and energy of connectedness, of love, a sacred portal for galactic integration. Because every time we do a webinar like this, at least every time I host one, it's always a bit of a portal opening for some type of integration. So the title of this is Integrating Our Galactic Heritage. And I want to emphasize the word integrating here because, we've talked about people being light workers and star seeds, but what I see is a common factor and in some ways more right at the heart of our actual evolutionary process is that we are integrators. And we are here to be galactic integrators. We are integrating galactic energy, galactic consciousness, galactic memory, and we're also integrating with our galactic roles and what it means to be human. So we're going to take a really deep dive into this subject, and we're going to learn a little bit more about what it means to be human and how all of you are connected with this galactic integration process. And what I always love about sharing this kind of information is that it actually activates your DNA. So I'm going to be telling some stories. I'm going to be sharing some information. Some of it comes from the living records, the Akashic records of the earth. Some of it comes from galactic memory, galactic history. But because this is all stuff that is inside of your body, this information has a way of resonating with these stories as they exist inside of your body and your DNA. And so that's what we want to drink in and say yes to, because as a storyteller, as a galactic integrator, one of the things that I get to do is to support a process that wants to happen inside of all of us. It's really a restoration of something that has always been there, that's been dormant, but it is reactivating and it is realigning with galactic sources of light and consciousness that have always been a part of us. But for some of us, it's only just now coming to light. Now, some of you have been on this journey for a long time, and you've been having experiences since you were in your childhood with galactic visitors and contact. And, for example, some of us started receiving at a very early age these memory implants or dream implants, which was a way of seeding the idea of ET contact into our dreams and to start to build some of that potential inside of us to be galactic integrators later on in life. And that has been happening for quite a lot of people. And we're also going to be looking at how different generations are coming to age and coming into their roles in this galactic integration process. So there's a lot to cover. I am going to talk about starseeds and galactic ambassadors and some different types of these things so that you can see some of the different sort of categories, if you will, of these types of people and their experiences. But if you are wondering, what am I? What category am I in? By the end of this part of the presentation, you're going to realize that it doesn't matter, because as a galactic integrator, you are integrating with all of it. So it doesn't matter what's in your DNA. What is there is a portal to galactic integration, because that's what you are as a human being. Now, some people do have a little bit more extraterrestrial DNA than others, and some people have come in with a stronger mission to bridge our connection into the galactic family, regardless of what is in their DNA. And then we see some different combinations of both. So over the years, I've received a lot of transmissions about this subject of what's in our DNA and our connection to the galaxy. I've also had experiences since childhood of contact. And since I was about 17 years old, I started to have more direct experiences of contact, even seeing ships, communicating with the beings telepathically inside, having out-of-body experiences where I would go aboard the ships in the out-of-body state. And here we're talking about not 3D physical ships, but vehicles of consciousness that are multidimensional, that can phase in and out of our physical reality. Some of my favorite experiences of contact have been experiences where the Arcturians, for example, were able to just split my physical reality into two different realities. And I was able to experience being in this reality, in 3D reality, but then a part of me opened up and had almost like a temporary 5D light body, physical body experience of their frequency of reality. And I got to see how there is a process opening up inside of our DNA to integrate these different realities so that they collapse and they come together and they become one integrated reality. So what is a starseed? Are you a starseed? What does this have to do with our evolutionary process? A lot of people are claiming that they are starseeds and actually wearing this and saying proudly, I am a starseed. Well, a starseed is a couple of different things. And there's maybe a couple of different sort of degrees of how you identify with or experience your own starseed nature. So a starseed to me is someone that has come in to be a bridge into the galactic family, the galactic community. And these are usually souls that are coming in and they embody a connection to various galactic families of consciousness because they come from there. Their souls are coming from those families of consciousness and incarnating here. And so in some cases, they may not have had a lot of lifetimes on Earth, but they're coming in and acting as a bridge. Now, often souls that have that kind of a role to be a bridge to the galaxy are incarnating into lineages that have a little bit more galactic DNA than the average human being. Now, we all have some galactic DNA, but over many, many centuries, there have been various seeding projects. A seeding project was a project where various galactic families of consciousness came in and they contributed some of their DNA to create a stronger bridge between the human family and various galactic families of consciousness. Now, there have been many seeding projects over many ages of time. And I venture to say that based upon the awareness that's been communicated to me, perhaps as much as 10% of the global population has a little bit of extra galactic DNA, ET DNA, a little bit more than the average person. Now, we all have some, like I said, and I'm going to tell a little bit of the story of how that came to be. But probably about 10% have a little bit more than others. There are certain lineages of Native Americans, for example. There are certain Jewish lineages. There are certain lineages in all parts of the world that have a little bit of this extra galactic DNA. A lot of these seeding projects were Pleiadian in nature. The Pleiadians seem to have come in a number of different times and contributed some DNA. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how that happens because I got to witness a more recent galactic seeding project that started or took place really less than 2 decades ago. And I was absolutely fascinated to see how this worked. So what I was shown is that a particular very highly evolved association of different ET races that wanted to support humanity to develop its consciousness, to assimilate more galactic knowledge, and to have a deeper relationship to the Earth, which is something that these particular ET races, I don't have names for them, but I do know that they all held a very high level of integrity with the Earth and humanity's relationship to the Earth. So these were beings that love and respect human sovereignty, that respect the Earth, and that engaged in this particular galactic seeding project because the Earth and humanity gave permission for this. So they asked permission. Now, there are other seeding projects that have gone on that have not involved the same level of permission. And that's kind of a, an interesting tangent that we might explore. But this particular project that I was shown asked permission And a number of different human volunteers said, yes, I will contribute my DNA. And so what happened is that there was some form of contact that took place physically where DNA samples were taken and the human beings involved were actually aboard a ship. Sometime during the night, they had an experience where they were taken aboard a ship, and they actually saw the process of their DNA being used to create a fertilized egg that could then be implanted into a surrogate mother. And these human beings were able to actually gather around what looks sort of like a petri dish and to actually participate in a ceremony of intentionalizing the energy of that child, of putting love and intentions for the earth and humanity into the field of that new genetic combination. And then that fertilized egg was implanted into a surrogate mother on the physical plane, also part of the project, but completely disconnected from the group that contributed the DNA. And so there are these mothers that got pregnant because they also volunteered for this, and yet the pregnancy was not from the DNA of their partner. It's kind of fascinating to consider that that has happened. I don't think it has happened very often. I think these seeding projects, the type that I witnessed, are really rare. However, I was shown the birth of at least one of these children and have watched them at different ages and have received information coming to me about this particular seeding project. And what I saw is that these children were born with a very high level of awareness of their DNA. They know what DNA is. They know what's in their DNA. They know that their DNA is different than most human beings, and that they actually carry genetic codes from 3 different galactic civilizations that contributed codes to their genetic profile. So imagine that. I mean, that's pretty far out that this is even happening. But what is this doing? And why would the Earth allow this? It's because the consciousness of all of the beings involved, the human contributors, the galactic ET contributors, they are all infusing the consciousness of these new humans with this very deep devotion to Mother Earth and to humanity, and to creating a more complete balance of harmony between humanity and nature. And that's why this is allowed, because there are certain galactic civilizations that have a stronger integrity with the Gaias of their world, and they have a stronger consciousness and resonance of respect for all life, that they know that we need a bit more of this right now. We have not yet fully embraced that as a principle of an organizing principle in our society, to put Earth first. And that's really the simple way to put it, to understand that the kind of civilizations that we want to actually connect with and receive downloads from, and that are, you know, they've kind of got our backs in a way in this whole integration process, because we're also facing other types of energies that do not love and respect human sovereignty and support it in the same way as others do. So we want to really adopt an Earth first consciousness, and to embody this as a principle in our consciousness, to say that we're really not interested in even communicating with or allowing into the auric field of the Earth any civilizations that do not respect human sovereignty and put the Earth first in terms of really listening to the Earth and listening to what the Earth wants, and to respect the discernment of all of the living creatures upon the Earth, some of which have more galactic discernment than we do. So we're going to get into this a little bit later on, because discernment is a really, really big key here. So there are some human beings that have a little bit more galactic DNA because they come from various seeding projects, most of them more ancient, even though there's a few that are more recent. Most of them are more ancient. And most of us that do have this galactic DNA, the larger percentage of it is Pleiadian or Saryon in nature. And there are some other seeding projects that are interesting as well, but these are kind of the main ones. But it doesn't really matter whether you have come in as as a bridge, somebody who's here to open that bridge of consciousness for humanity collectively to the galactic community. It doesn't matter whether you have one particular type of genetic code or another, because when you go back to the very origins of humanity, when you go back to how we were created, we were all created with some extraterrestrial DNA. Now, there's a couple of other things that I want to talk about before we get into that, because it's actually, to me, it's even sharing the story is like a sacred ceremony. It's like an invitation to dive deep into the awareness of our origins and to read from the records of your own body. So we're going to create a little bit of a ceremony out of this. But I want to talk a little bit more about some other things related to starseeds, because we also have walk-ins. Walk-ins and starseeds are a little bit different. With a walk-in, you actually have, in some cases, a galactic ambassador. Walk-ins are usually extraterrestrial souls that have walked into a body where the soul that was there before has left. Actually, some of my first mentors were walk-ins. I had a Pleiadian walk-in and a Saryon walk-in that were mentors of mine. They were also channels. They were very highly evolved beings. They were here to support humanity's awakening in various ways. And these walk-ins were playing roles to help us with spiritual development, but there are other kinds of walk-ins as well. Now, sometimes a starseed and a walk-in can be the same thing. So there's differences. A walk-in, usually when we're talking about a walk-in, we're talking about somebody who's come in to take over where another soul has left. But when you have a starseed, someone that has a little bit more galactic DNA, somebody that is already on the path to bridge consciousness with the galactic community, sometimes a walk-in can come as a guide and join in the incarnation. And then you have both going on. You have somebody who is here as a starseed, but they have a walk-in guide that is not replacing anything. They are just coming in to enhance that incarnation and to co-create from being partially in the body, being partially overlaid. So there's a lot of fascinating possibilities here for how we can experience galactic integration. We can experience meeting our galactic guides, and as we become integrated with their energies, we become, in a way, ambassadors of galactic integration, and we can become models of it. And that can happen without you having a walk-in guide and without you wearing the badge of I'm a starseed. It comes through your willingness to receive and to connect with all that is available to integrate with through another kind of galactic seed, which is a seed of wholeness. And this seed of wholeness is a seed of wholeness with humanity and wholeness with the entire galaxy. And when you really get that that seed of wholeness has been inside of all of us, you realize that starseed or not, you are integrating all of it into the vibration of the one. So now we're going to connect in with the story about our origins. Now, the story of human origins is incredibly vast. There's a lot to it, but there's one piece of it that we want to center in on that is incredibly important for us to understand our role as galactic integrators. So I want to invite you to just connect with your body for a moment and connect with the earth and this earth first mentality, this earth first consciousness that the various starseed projects have been about supporting. It's why the earth has allowed these seeding projects to take place, because they are in integrity with the earth. And so with that in mind, let's get connected for a moment with the earth herself and allow the Gaia resonance field to arise within us and to reveal the story of our origins to us. Because it's not enough to just hear someone else's experience of this and someone else's take on it. I can share with you something that was given to me to share, because the earth recognizes, and many other beings recognize, that I am a conduit for this kind of information to come out to people. But because this information is inside of you, it is part of your natural birthright to receive the restoration of these memories and to reclaim them. And so, to the degree that I'm able to relate these memories to you accurately and with a high level of integrity, with the truth, allow the reflection of this knowledge to take you into your own experience of it and drink this in, because the story I'm going to share with you is a story of a sacred ceremony. And it is a ceremony that exists inside of everyone's DNA. The record of this exists inside of all of our bodies. And so we can all tap into and remember and experience the ceremony as if it is happening inside of us in simultaneous time. So about a little more than 200,000 years ago, there was a seeding project that took place to create humanity. Now, you've probably read or heard different stories that people have channeled about our origins and about what happened. I remember reading various versions of this from other channels. And yet, these were the perspectives of the channels telling the story. And the perspective, perhaps, of various masters or ETs. But the earth also has a perspective. The earth remembers. The earth also consciously participated in this project. So imagine that the earth is this wondrous, amazing, vast galactic mother whose presence extends into the galaxy. And she is seeking to extend her influence. The earth knows that she is this magnificent being, this magnificent biological library of creation. And she wants to extend her consciousness to evolve, to become greater love, and to share that love as a frequency with other emerging worlds. And the earth is aware that there are many potentials, there are many possibilities for how this can happen. And so she is looking at what you might consider the different suitors, the different potential galactic contributors that want to come in and create a new species, a new guardian species, in the same way that the dolphins and the whales are a very ancient guardian species in this world. They guard and protect this world with their consciousness. They are stewards of the sacred memory of the earth. Well, it was time to create a new galactic guardian species. And there were many different species that showed up that wanted to contribute. So the Pleiadians, and I don't remember exactly why, I wasn't told exactly why, but the Pleiadians were chosen to be the stewards of this project. It was their project. They had a reason for creating this new species upon the earth. And that reason was in resonance with a galactic purpose that the earth saw for this new species that went far beyond the reasons why the Pleiadians were creating this particular human species, us. So the earth, interestingly, had a much more far-reaching view. The earth sees that the Pleiadians want to create a new human species and is thinking about what is going to become of that species, what we will become, what we will evolve into, well beyond what the Pleiadians were thinking at the time. So the earth said yes, but the earth actually didn't reveal all of the potentials. The earth simply opened the doorway energetically to support this happening. So the Pleiadians, when they started to experiment with how to create a human being that would be suitable to this environment, that would be able to fulfill the various purposes that they had for that particular being, they started experimenting, and they had a lot of difficulty creating a hybrid. They were working with primitive human DNA of some of our human ancestors, and they were mixing it with their own DNA, and they were really having a challenge to create a human hybrid that would survive. So they had complications, and they had to bring in support and help from the really advanced reptilian master genuses that were, some of which were graduates from the previous Earth living library. So millions of years before, there was a living library, a version of the Earth living library that was stewarded by a very conscious reptilian race. And they actually ascended and went beyond their physicality and became their light body selves and became a race of galactic beings. Now, there's a lot of people that have heard all kinds of stories about the reptilians, and I'm going to get into that a little bit. But the reptilians that were involved with the human project were beings of love and light. They were very, very advanced in their understanding of DNA, and they were very advanced in their understanding of the timelines and all of the different potentials that they were participating in. So they helped the Pleiadians to create this hybrid. Now, originally, there were a lot of other civilizations that wanted to contribute DNA. There was a whole congress of representatives from many, many different galactic races that came to witness this project. I remember seeing some of the ETs that were there because this entire memory was shown to me. I was in a visionary state, and it's like I was actually there witnessing all of the activities that went on. And so I saw some ETs that were lion-like in nature. They had lion heads and lion-like bodies. There were some that were elephant-like extraterrestrial beings. There were some that did not have upright walking bodies with legs and arms. They were more like slugs or snails, or different types of creatures that they could teleport, they could appear and disappear, they could move in and out of this lower vibrational reality, but they were still manifesting their original forms from their own worlds. And many of these were civilizations that had been contributors of DNA to many animal species on the Earth. So these were some of the contributors to the Earth Living Library that had already been involved, and they wanted to have representation of their more higher consciousness selves upon the Earth. They wanted to see a new version of themselves come to fruition as a new galactic civilization on the Earth. But because this was a Pleiadian project, the Pleiadians ultimately were the ones that got to make the call. And they actually considered for a time the idea of creating some kind of a super being. They wanted to see if they could figure out how to incorporate DNA from all of these different creatures and to create one genetic profile that incorporated a little bit of all of it. So they were thinking really, really big in terms of how to create galactic integration. Now, that's one of the reasons why we're talking about our role as galactic integrators, because that's actually the original purpose. It was one of the original purposes, because they thought that, there's a lot of different civilizations out there. We have not been able to bring them all into alignment with a vibration of wholeness that would support a collective galactic ascension process. And so in order to make that happen, we want to see if we can create a species that could integrate them all into a balanced vibration of wholeness. But ultimately, they decided that this was not going to work. Now, there were some civilizations that were disappointed, but they backed down and they allowed the project to come to fruition. And finally, the Pleiadians were able to create a hybrid with the help of the reptilians. And the reptilians, as their contribution, they also included a small amount of reptilian DNA in these original human prototypes to create a link holographically through time with the old living library of the earth. And there's a very important reason for that, because all of the achievements of the reptilians who ascended were connected with those genetic codes. So we carry within us a key, a vibrational key and link to the entire ascension knowledge system of the ancient reptilians, some of which we're our own ancient selves, because some of us have had incarnations as these ancient beings. Some of us are doing this whole ascension process for the second time around on the earth, because it happened before. So now we're going to really connect in with the mix of what is really inside of us, because we are part Pleiadian. We are part reptilian even. Strange to think, but we all have a trace amount of these codes that is still there. It's not detectable as a reptilian code if we looked at our whole profile genetically, because those characteristics have been over time diminished and diluted by other seeding projects and by other things that came later on in the original seeding project as well. Because even though we started out with a little bit of reptilian DNA, there were other infusions of galactic DNA that came after that that diluted the reptilian, so that the reptilian DNA was completely hidden. And we didn't even know that we had it. But we did have Pleiadian DNA, and we did have some Saryon DNA that came in a little bit later on. However, before we were awakened as these first two prototypes, the first two male and female prototypes, there was a very special ceremony that took place. And I was shown this as if there was a spaceship, some type of Pleiadian ship that had landed upon the earth that was acting as the laboratory for these genetic experiments. And all of these different galactic emissaries were allowed to come into the laboratory and to see these first two genetic hybrids, these first hybrid humans, and to bless them. And so while these two beings were laying there on the table, they received what I could only describe as a sacred ceremony. And just imagine this for a moment. You may even want to close your eyes and just connect in with this and just see this. Imagine that you are there laying on that table, and that all of these different galactic emissaries are coming in, and they are sharing the resonance of their chakra system, the chakra system of their whole civilization, the knowledge system of their civilization. And so the process of galactic integration had already begun from the very beginning. That is how we started. We started by receiving a procession of many different beings that came and shared their energy with us. Some of them were upright standing beings. They were able to stand there at the edge of the table. They were able to do a kind of a Reiki session in a way, and to transmit energy and put energy into different places in our DNA to give our DNA the resonance of that galactic energy. In some cases, the emissaries were not upright standing beings, and they actually would take some of these different ETs, as long as they weren't too heavy, and they would actually place them on top of these two prototype humans that were laying there on the table. And they would vibe together for a while. And so this went on for quite some time, until all of the different races that were present had blessed each of us. And they all had given a blessing to the project and honored that these beings were going to be galactic integrators. And they would be a beautiful, wonderful new addition to a growing galactic family. And then these two beings were awakened. They were given awareness of who they were. And then they were set free onto the earth to begin exploring the earth. Now, this might sound in some small way like it parallels the story of Adam and Eve. And I assure you, that is not where this is going. This was not Adam and Eve. This was not the origin of that particular story. This is an entirely different and much more ancient creation that was setting the stage for many other integrations that came after. So these original two human beings were allowed to mate with each other, to produce offspring, and from those offspring, they began to create and build up a community of these original beings. And then some of those were chosen and became part of a further seeding project where more galactic DNA was infused. So we got more infusions of galactic DNA. Now, over time, the project came to a point where there was conflict between the different extraterrestrial civilizations that were overseeing this project. Some of them thought that they were above us, they were superior to us, they should be allowed to rule over us, and they did not want to give us knowledge of our origins, knowledge of our connection to the galactic family, our genetic link. Now, why? Why would they not want us to have that knowledge? The interesting thing is that because we have some of this galactic DNA, we can evolve our consciousness and expand our chakras and open our consciousness to integrate all of it into a galactic whole. And if we did that, we would become as powerful, as source connected, as knowledgeable as the beings that may have at one time wanted to rule over us. So they sought to deny us knowledge of what was in our DNA so that we would not realize that we had the potential to become conscious of and embrace and integrate with a greater holographic whole that we are a part of. They didn't want us to know. They wanted us to stay earthbound and to fulfill the roles that we were given upon the earth, to aid them as workers. And that was one side of the story. There was another aspect of this where the civilizations that were working with us wanted us to have knowledge, wanted us to become something more. They saw our potential to become galactic integrators, and they knew that this was part of our original purpose. And so they wanted to support us. And there was eventually a great conflict that took place between these different civilizations that were some of the progenitors of the human family. And so there was never a complete agreement. And we reached this point in our history where a great deal of knowledge was wiped out and we were left without almost any awareness at all of where we came from at a certain point. Now, I'm leaving out tons of detail here. I want to stay focused on the main point here, which is that number one, we were denied knowledge of what was in our DNA. And number two, we have had a potential inside of us to become conscious of the original purpose of the project of the human family as galactic integrators. And we are at that point now where a lot of the original beings that supported this project are showing up in our field because they are coming to witness our galactic birth. Now, I invited in, or rather received the invitation to connect in with some of our galactic friends, and the Arcturians are with us, and there are many other galactic ambassadors and emissaries that are looking on. So I want to invite all of you to open a channel to receive some of this light of galactic integration that is coming in, because we're going to see what some of our galactic commentators have to say about all of this. So I'm actually going to go into a little bit of a meditation for just a moment and connect in with some of the messages that want to flow through. And I see some of you are already asking questions. Thank you, and your comments as well. I love your comments. Feel free to comment as much as you like. However, hold the questions for a little bit because we are going to do a Q&A, and I'm very excited to interact with all of you guys. So let's just meditate for a moment, and I'm going to close my eyes and be in silence and just tune in. Our galactic friends, the Arcturians, are the most present right now with us. They say we are keeping this simple for you. There's actually a lot of galactic emissaries that would love to speak and to share information. And those of you that stay tuned to my work are going to be able to receive a lot more, because there's quite a number of different galactic emissaries that will speak through me at different times over time to give us updates about how they perceive the integration process and to give us teachings of discernment. But the Arcturians are the ones that are here now. And I want to invite you to really feel a little bit of an activation in your crown chakra, as there is a portal of connection through your crown chakra into a very special galactic portal of consciousness that is a part of the new human being, the new humanity that is awakening within us. I'm just going to describe for you an awareness that the Arcturians are giving to us. And they're speaking about how when certain qualities of consciousness begin to awaken inside of us, they can see the reflection of themselves in this, because we are going through an integration process that is similar to theirs, the one that they went through in their ascension process. And so they love to shine a light upon these things because it is a source of great inspiration for them. So we are the Arcturians, and we are communicating to all of you through a joy frequency. There is a certain experience that we've been having with you as we have watched and observed what is taking place upon the earth in your awakening. There are certain signposts that you pass. There are certain points on the evolutionary journey that are familiar to us. There are certain codes of consciousness that are activating within you, and there are certain potentials that are arising that you have the potential to choose. And your ability to find your focus on the new evolutionary potentials is in some ways being interfered with. But that interference is being counteracted by the joy vibrations that we and others bring to you as we see you taking certain steps in your evolutionary process. And we are able to celebrate those steps the same way that you would celebrate a child taking its first steps. We are celebrating the galactic child of humanity that is beginning to discover its newfound strength as a consciousness in the universe that has the ability to co-create on a very vast scale. There are certain changes that we are beginning to notice inside of you. Changes in your inner senses, changes in your physical senses. And because we are so inspired to see the evolutionary process of your awakening taking place in such a similar way to our experience, we are able to overlay your experience with a form of joyful awareness that shows you your future potential by reflecting a little bit of the parallels between you and our past, of our ascension process. So it is interesting to consider that our past is reflecting your future, and that the parallels between us are a source of great joy and inspiration. Now, there is a sacred portal that is beginning to open. It is being energized. It is difficult to describe the nature of this particular galactic portal of consciousness, but we will endeavor to do our best with the language system that you use. As humanity coalesces into a oneness vibration, as more and more of you align with a state of singularity, a resonance of human unity, there is a way in which that arising singularity of consciousness within you reflects the singularities of other galactic nations. And in that reflectivity, there is a place of balance, a place where your energies and our energies mingle in a place of perfect balance, where you are met as equals. Now, our energy as Arcturians is considerably stronger. Our presence, our ability to manifest through the use of sacred power is considerably stronger than what you are able to express in your current state. If you were to look at the evolutionary process that you are on over many ages, from now going into the future, you would see that as an emerging singularity, as a collective that is based on oneness, you would grow in your power, in your ability to use sacred power in alignment with divine will to co-create, to co-influence together what is happening in the field around you to ever wider degrees, to influence other worlds. And yet you would also learn how to do this and would follow a kind of directive that comes from the wisdom that has been placed inside of you. A directive that seeks to only commune with other civilizations through a balancing point. If you were to travel in a state of collective consciousness, in the vehicle of your singularity, as you will, thousands of years from now, you would travel and you would find other civilizations. You would meet emerging worlds. And you would look for the potential of an emerging world to coalesce with a vibration of singularity and oneness. And to the degree that that vibration manifests, you would be able to interact with that civilization. A civilization that does not embody oneness would simply not be able to resonate with the nature of your consciousness as a singularity. You would have to wait. You would have to plant seeds. You would have to cultivate, if divine will gave you that role, to cultivate and shape gradually through sharing of frequencies, the potential of galactic integration through oneness. And so, as more oneness arose within a civilization, you would have a greater mirror reflecting the field between you. It is like a circle that gradually widens. As the oneness increases, the portal widens, where consciousness is able to reflect both sides of a oneness equation of balance. And so, even though you, in your state of singularity, might be stronger than the civilization you are contacting, you would not ever seek to overpower their frequency. You would seek to support the unique creative energy of that civilization, to only share your frequency to the extent that it meets the others in balance, in a way that respects the sovereignty of that world, and that offers an influence that is compatible with an evolving balance, where the civilization you are working with is merely integrating galactic sources of energy into the balance of wholeness that it identifies with from within its own sphere of consciousness. So you will do this one day. Humanity will have this role. But now you can understand that this is how we are coming to meet you. There is a portal that is opening. It is a place where your betweenergy with the Arcturians and many other emissaries is growing and strengthening. But the key to accessing this portal is always to focus upon the balancing point between us. When you can receive that our frequencies do not wish to influence or overpower or be more prominent than your own frequencies, when you recognize the value of your frequencies, then you can show up within this portal of contact as an earth emissary, as an emissary of humanity, and you will be met with great delight. You will be met by those that want to speak to you as an equal. And so it is for each of you to see yourselves as equals with the Galactic Family, with the emissaries that can commune with you through this portal of communication and ascension. So we ask you to simply receive this in your hearts, as your hearts are connected to this portal. And as humanity's oneness expands, this particular galactic portal also expands. It is a portal to contact. And yet we also say to you that there is no need to seek contact outwardly, to seek contact by extending consciousness outside of yourself into physical space. We invite you to consider that the most profound forms of contact that can occur at this time will be inner in nature. Not that you do not also have the opportunity to see our ships, our vehicles of light, manifesting at times. On certain rare occasions, we do make ourselves known in a very non-intrusive way to those of you that have already begun to integrate with this portal of consciousness. But we invite you to look within, to receive our frequencies within you first, and to know that the greatest portal to galactic integration is inside of your DNA. So we thank you. There are presently many outpourings of Arcturian energy, in particular, that are showering the earth with radiant frequencies of love and light that celebrate the earth's ascension. And so, if you wish to truly open yourselves to contact with the most highly evolved galactic emissaries and families of consciousness, open your crown chakras and your hearts and receive the blessings that we give, not only to you, but to the earth, to all the earth's animals. As we are here to bless your sacred relationship to the earth and to bless your connection to the animals and the plants and all life here, as this is part of how we are participating in the Creator's revelation to restore humanity's original blueprint as stewards and guardians of the living creation. And so we will acknowledge these roles within you as you are awakening to them. And that is also part of the nature of the contact that the earth herself is welcoming as a natural part of the progression of your awakening. There are other forms of contact that are meeting you at other vibratory levels that are denser and that are not coming from the same level of integrity with humanity and the earth. And it is for you to discern the presence of all the agendas that are here and to awaken to your sacred power to choose what is right for you as galactic citizens who have rights and who have sacred power and who each have a say. This is perhaps one of the most important keys that you can integrate with as a galactic citizen. You are used to thinking that much of the decision making, especially regarding extraterrestrial matters, is being made by others, that the governments and the secret organizations of government, in their own ways, have taken this power away or withheld it or excluded you from it. But nothing could be further from the truth. When you exercise your true power to represent and model for humanity the true sacred powers that the earth gives you to protect her with your consciousness, and each of you can have a level of sacred power that is beyond the leader of any nation. And your influence will be felt globally as you are among those who choose to step into and model this. And again, we support you. Thank you. Your Arcturian brothers and sisters are all waving to you energetically. And we are with you. So thank you to our beloved Arcturian friends. All right. So there was a lot that was shared there, and we are now 1 hour into our webinar. There are a few things that I'd like to share that are going to talk a little bit about discernment and contact itself, so that we can start to realize this sacred power that the Arcturians were talking about. And then we're going to do some Q&A. So I'm really excited to answer questions because I know you guys have a lot of really great questions. So I'm just going to take a look at my notes here for a second. Yeah, I just want to make mention of this too. The reptilian piece I find so fascinating because, you know, a lot of you have heard about this idea of evil reptilians or dark reptilians or reptilians trying to, you know, control the earth and all of that. And one of the things that I discovered along the way is that there were, in fact, some reptilian energies, a small group of reptilian time travelers that were seeking to thwart the human project and misdirect it in a certain way. And because our spiritual inheritance from the ancient reptilian living library is that of the knowledge of ascension, and because that's a part of our DNA, and because we have a genetic link to that knowledge system, which is awakening inside of us, this particular group of reptilians, in order to prevent us from awakening to that, they sought to do two things. They wanted to make us think that the reptilians that were present, or that the reptilian energy is bad, that it's controlling, that it's out to get us. They basically wanted to give all reptilians a bad name so that we would not discover our reptilian inheritance. And we would not discover the truth of our own bodies. And the other thing they wanted to do is to make us think that they came from space, from some other world, when they actually come from the ancient earth. And that was a way of misdirecting our consciousness to think that not only are these reptilians bad, but they come from some other world, as opposed to us unlocking the truth that the reptilians actually are some of our original creators and designers, and they also contributed a tremendous amount of knowledge to support our ascension. And that knowledge is inside of our own bodies. So anyways, I think that's fascinating that a small group of reptilians tried to misdirect us from awakening to the reptilian consciousness that we actually have, that is a consciousness of pure love and an inheritance of pure love, and also consequently a connection into the older records of the earth, so that through this link with the reptilians, we're able to remember things that took place millions of years ago upon the earth. So that's just a side note, but I'm going to go into discernment a little bit. So humanity has many different allies. The allies of humanity are civilizations that love and protect living worlds. They value life more than they value resources as commodities. And this is one of the really big differences between the different kinds of civilizations that we are experiencing contact with. If you could make a really, really simple comparison between these two ends of the spectrum, you have these civilizations that love and respect human sovereignty, that they see consciousness and knowledge as being the most valuable resource. And that all of the materials that are made of, or that the earth is made of, and our genetic material, the genetic material of the plants and the animals, the minerals that are here, the water of our world, they see all of these things as carriers of memory, as living symbols, as carriers of knowledge. And as a storehouse of knowledge. The earth is a storehouse of knowledge. So then you have civilizations on the other end of the spectrum, and they are more technologically based instead of being beings of light that travel in vehicles made of light. And they have a need for resources, and so they see the earth's resources as commodities. They want to gain a foothold here. They want to gain access, and they need our permission to be able to do that, because they do not have the ability to just come in and take over a world just because they want access to the resources. They have to engage us in a system of barter and trade. And they have to actually get us to adopt a value system that gives them an advantage over us. And the way they're doing that is with ET technology. If they can get us hooked on ET technology so that we are valuing extraterrestrial technology and the idea of becoming technologically advanced in a way that distracts us from our potential to become spiritually advanced, then they can lead us down a pathway where we become willing to trade away the Earth's resources so that we can get access to more and more advanced forms of ET technology. Now, the thing is, we really don't need ET technology. We may have benefited from it in some ways, but we really don't need extraterrestrial technology to become a truly advanced civilization. First of all, we're fully capable through divine will and divine inspiration of developing our own technology. But more importantly, the awakening of the dormant potential of the human brain can take us beyond the need for electronic technology to be able to experience communication with the global consciousness, with the collective, with the Akashic records, telepathy, being able to remote view, traveling out of body, experiencing incredibly powerful states of tantric bliss, sharing knowledge through the chakra system, being able to just touch an object and absorb memories from it, being able to travel interdimensionally and to visit other worlds through traveling the inner channels of our multidimensional DNA. These are all things that we can learn how to do, but we don't need electronic technology to be able to do that. What we need is love. Love will unlock the technological potential of our multidimensional DNA. One of the things that our own future selves have said to me is that our DNA is already the most advanced form of technology that we possess. It can do extraordinary things in terms of what it gives our consciousness access to. But we are very much in danger of being distracted from those potentials with increasingly powerful forms of technology that entrance human attention into an electronic environment. So I'm not going to get too far into that, but I'm going to go over a few of the things, a few of the ways that we can sort of upset that interference and prevent it from taking hold. So I'm actually going to go down a list that I wrote up here. In order to prevent ET civilizations from influencing our values in a way that gives them an advantage, then there's several different things that we can learn to focus on in our consciousness that can prevent us from being misdirected and can allow us to discover through joy and love and light and connection these profound gifts that are being restored inside of us. So the first part of that is the gift of the animals. There are many profound psychic, spiritual, and energetic gifts that the animals want to give to us. And they also have tremendous discernment, particularly whales and dolphins have a tremendous amount of discernment about the extraterrestrial presence. They know all the different star groups. They know the history of these civilizations. They can remember what has happened in the galaxy, and they know what we're up against. They know what we are struggling to deal with. And they can provide us a tremendous amount of discernment. So as we start to experience more awareness of the galaxy and the different influences of galactic consciousness that are here, for better or for worse, we're becoming aware of it. And as we become aware of it, we need discernment. And there are times when we may need to consult with the dolphins and the whales. So that is a focus of attention, because the dolphins and the whales are available to us. They want to help us. So anytime, well, actually, I'll give you an example, because there was a time when I actually did have an experience of galactic contact. It was telepathic in nature, and it was very intrusive and upsetting and difficult. And I was having trouble understanding what is going on. Like, why did I attract this? What is in my resonance field that needs to shift? And I was able to focus my attention on the dolphins and the whales to bring their energy into my contact experience. And they came in, and I actually felt as though there were all these dolphins just swimming side by side with me, because they paired energies with me, and they took me into the fold of their group consciousness, and they started to help me work things out and to figure out what I needed to do to adjust my consciousness so that I could have the integrity with the earth and humanity and the angelic realms that would allow me to break off of my resonance of contact with these beings. So there's no reason to fear having contact with ETs that is unpleasant, because it actually is part of how we are evolving and developing awareness of our true power to actually create the proper kinds of psychic boundaries. So that's just part of the game. You know, we have to learn how to do this. Eventually, as humanity awakens, we will be able to create a kind of a psychic boundary that encompasses the earth and the moon and far beyond it. Now, interestingly, the moon has a role to play in the evolution of consciousness. And right now, there are actually ET bases on the moon that, if we knew what they were doing there, we would not want them there. And the fact that they are there is actually a test for us, because they are altering the frequency of the moon in a certain way that affects us. And yet we also have the potential to rise to the occasion and to form a unified field of consciousness that expands to envelop the moon and to change the frequency of the moon, so that it's not the moon changing us, it's us changing the moon. We can change the resonance of anything that is in our field because we are that powerful. But if we don't become unified in our consciousness, then we are susceptible to having our resonance changed by sources of energy that are more powerful than us when we are in this disconnected state. So that's the name of the game. It's all about changing our resonance, changing the resonance of humanity. There are those trying to change our resonance, and in order to prevent this, we have to change our own resonance and become more unified so that we can access more of our sacred power. So the animals are going to help us do that. Having more integrity with the environment, finding ways to live that are in greater harmony and that demonstrate and model greater integrity with the environment, is another way that we become aligned in our consciousness with civilizations that protect human sovereignty and that support human sovereignty. Because when we are in integrity with the earth, with all of our actions and our choices, then we will become aligned with other civilizations that operate from a place of integrity with their own Gaias and that are also in integrity with ours. So we want to become more like those civilizations, because then we gain their field of protection around us. We're able to receive the way in which they can support these kinds of consciousness to flourish inside of us, so that the forms of consciousness that protect us the most get strengthened very, very quickly. The earth first organizing principle of consciousness. So another thing we want to focus on is angelic integration, becoming integrated with our angelic counterparts. Archangel Michael has presented himself to me a number of times as the Archangel of Galactic Integration. So Archangel Michael wants to help us with our ET discernment. So we want to really open ourselves to receive Archangel Michael's teaching about galactic integration and galactic discernment because the angels are going to support us to evolve our discernment as well. Now, grounding into the earth is another big piece. And this year, more than ever, we want to start making the earth a focus, because there are some changes and potentials for acceleration, but also challenges that are coming in future years that we need to be really, really grounded to be able to handle the integrations that are coming. So actually spending time laying on the earth and allowing the earth to take you down into her resonance field and to envelop you in earth energy, so that we are really connected with the fields of consciousness that are a part of the earth and all of the families of consciousness that we share the earth with. Because if we are in resonance with that, we are in resonance with forms of intelligence that our brains are designed to be able to channel and participate in. So this is what part of our dormant brain potential is about. When it awakens, it plugs into nature. It plugs into families of consciousness and fields of living intelligence that we can channel and tap into, and that become a part of a very vast, expansive experience of consciousness that our brains were designed to be able to process and to anchor. But it's consciousness that experiences itself not only as a consciousness that identifies with the body, but we identify with the whole of life on earth as an extension of ourselves. So that's what wants to happen. And the animals and the nature spirits, they literally want to come and plug our brains back into this. Now, people talk about I need nature time, and we're becoming disconnected from nature. And it's true. It's true that we need time in nature, and we need time to unplug from technology. Fasting from technology is another key that's important. We need to start practicing technology fasting so that we can model this and make technology fasting an important part of our culture. We've had this fascination with the new technology. We've discovered how dependent we can become on it and even addicted to it. So now we need to start maturing in our relationship to electronic technology, and we need to start taking breaks from it and teaching this as a practice and actually demonstrating it so that it becomes a culture-wide, planetary-wide practice to take breaks and fast from this kind of technology that we're using. So going into nature and unplugging from technology might have been an amazing thing to do before now, and very healthy, but there's something much, much more that wants to happen now with our integration with these fields of consciousness that come from nature. Because we're not just having time connecting our natural biorhythms to the earth. There is a reconnection with new fields of consciousness and ancient portals of memory and connections into the pathway of ascension that is happening through our connection with nature that are extremely profound. And so having time in nature, laying on the earth, meditating in nature, it's going to yield bigger results than it did before. You're going to be able to just lay down on a rock somewhere and feel how the whole earth is communicating with you and restoring things inside of you. And your experience of the animal signs will be different, because the animals will be communicating with you in a way that plugs you into whole galactic families of consciousness that are connected with that animal species. So these are huge experiences of integration that go beyond what we experienced when we were just playing in the woods as a kid. There's a lot that wants to happen. And we might find actually that some of our most powerful inner experiences of communing with beings like the Arcturians and the Pleiadians happen when the earth is at the center of our focus, not focusing on the Arcturians, not focusing on the Pleiadians, focusing on the earth, focusing on the animals, and then allowing the Pleiadians and the Arcturians and other such beings to come in and strengthen that focus, to strengthen that bridge, to overlay new layers of consciousness onto it to enhance our connection into nature, because they want us to recognize the value of these deep experiences of profound contact with nature as being as important, as magnificent, as wondrous as any kind of experience we could have with the Arcturians themselves. So we don't want to glorify ET contact before we realize how many powerful forms of sacred contact we could have with the nature spirits, or the whales and the dolphins, or the plants even. So there's a lot there. And I just want to go to a couple of other things, and then we'll do some questions. Probably the most powerful code of consciousness that has to do with bridging us into a world that is integrated with an ascension path and with the Galactic Family comes from a code of consciousness that we call the 1-1 vibration. The 1-1 vibration is a vibration of perfect equality of being. I am one, you are one, we are both equally one with each other and equally one with the heart of humanity. Another way of saying that is to say that we are both equally one with each other and equally one with the third being that is between every two beings. That is our betweenergy. I actually was going to show you, those of you that are not aware of my book, Roya Sands and the Bridge Between Worlds, I actually use this book to introduce a whole conversation about betweenergy and what betweenergy is and how it is strengthening in our consciousness and opening up different dimensions of interconnectedness and ways of sharing consciousness through a field of reflectivity that we call betweenergy. So there is a code of consciousness that links us in with betweenergy, and it is 1-1. A 1-1 vibration is a vibration that you can recognize. When it's present, you can feel it. You feel the balance. You feel that your energy and the other person's energy is in balance and harmony, and you feel as though the two of you are creating a container for group consciousness, because there's no superiority in your focus. And you're both willing to be vulnerable to a state of co-creation where you are allowing the other person to influence your consciousness and they are allowing you to influence theirs through the way in which we co-describe reality, the ways in which we co-describe each other as beings of light, as beings of interconnectedness. So the 1-1 vibration eventually will be recognized as a global code of consciousness. Eventually, everyone will know what betweenergy is. Everyone will know that there's a place of balance between us where you can't tell where one soul ends and the other begins. And everyone will know that the 1-1 vibration is the difference between the old civilization and the new civilization. So before the planetary shift in consciousness, the 1-1 vibration was obscured, it was dormant, it was not something that was even understood as a code of consciousness. So even when people experienced a 1-1 vibration with each other, they didn't see that that was part of a pattern that linked us into a vibration of wholeness that could grow and spread and become amplified. Now we're at a point where the 1-1 vibration is beginning to reveal itself as a code that can awaken humanity, so that when you feel your connection to the whole of humanity through a 1-1 vibration, you can then focus into the 1-1 vibration and hold 1-1 with another human being until they feel safe enough to join in and connect with and link in with this growing field of group consciousness through receiving their value as equals within that field. So I am holding a 1-1 vibration with each of you now. We are both co-equal with the one. Now, on the other side of the planetary shift, everyone will be in a 1-1 vibration with humanity, a 1-1 vibration with the earth. We will be 1-1 with the animals, and we will be 1-1 with our galactic friends. For example, the Arcturians. We will hold a 1-1 vibration with the Arcturians, meaning that we will be able to focus upon a place of balance where their consciousness and ours reflect each other in perfect equality. There's a perfect equality of being, and that is where 1-1 activates and makes present the betweenergy that we share with the Arcturians. And then it's just going to keep opening up to other galactic races. But we need to become 1-1 with each other and the Earth first. So the 1-1 vibration is going to spread, and eventually enough human beings will know that we have aligned with the 1-1 vibration together collectively, that if we all start to focus on being 1-1 with all those that remain that haven't yet awakened into that code of consciousness, we can imbue it in such a strong way that everyone that is left will receive the invitation to step into the 1-1 vibration. And that is when the wave of ones will sweep across the world, and we will then be at a whole new level of consciousness collectively. That is the awakening of humanity. It is an awakening into a 1-1 vibration. That is what happened on the Arcturian worlds. They describe awakening into a 1-1 vibration on their worlds. That is how it happened. That same code of consciousness is what awakened them. It's what allowed them to awaken other worlds. And it's what is going to play a very important role in our shift. So, one final piece here. Should we be seeking contact? You know, you see people going out and having contact parties and extending an invitation, sort of an open invitation in a very undiscerning way for contact. You see conferences like Contact in the Desert. You know, the idea of making contact for some people, it's the next form of tourism. And that's something that I really feel we need to take a deeper look at. What is the level of intentionality with which we are inviting contact? And how much discernment do we really have about this process? Now, there are some that are teaching processes of opening the doorway to contact that are operating with a very high level of intentionality. They have an earth-first consciousness. They are in integrity with humanity, and they are meeting our galactic family as equals, and thus are only pulling in contact with beings that are able to meet us as equals through a mutual acknowledgement of oneness. However, the idea of just inviting in any kind of ETs or welcoming them to be here in our skies is very, very undiscerning. And so people that want to do this as a thrill, or people that think that this is a good idea because we can learn things from just about any ET that happens to be there. If they're more technologically advanced, then they're more spiritually advanced. And so, you know, the closer they come, the better things can get. Some people have that kind of a viewpoint. And that's what we want to warn people against. We want to bring people into this understanding that while supporting conversations about exopolitics needs to happen, and getting the conversation to become more expanded in the media, where we're talking about, you know, who are they, why are they here? And we've moved beyond this conversation about are we alone in the universe to who are they, why are they here? We want to start to teach people about how there is a level of integrity that we need to have with the earth, so that we are basically operating as conscious emissaries of the earth that know that there's a difference between the kinds of civilizations that respect our role as sovereign guardians and those that would prefer that we take a back seat and allow them to manage the earth's resources. So this is something that we need to start having as a conversation in a much bigger way in the world. So there's more that I could share here, but I'm just going to take a look at questions because I know there's a lot of questions here and we don't have a lot of time. So, okay, so I'm going to look at a few of these. What is galactic DNA? Okay, glad you asked this question because I actually realize now that I've been using the term galactic DNA and I haven't explained that there's more than one type of galactic DNA that we should be talking about here. So throughout the talk that I've given, I've talked about galactic DNA in the sense of actual trace amounts of genetic material that was originally contributed to us from another galactic race like the Pleiadians. So there are forms of DNA that came from elsewhere originally. Now, of course, our bodies are taking in elements that come from the earth, and so the chemicals that our bodies are made of are replicating these codes, and yet they contain a resonance, a link to the original source of those codes which came elsewhere. Now that's what I've generally been referring to when I speak about galactic DNA. And one of the really interesting parts of having galactic DNA is that there's a connection between DNA and language. Our DNA is actually affected by our language. Whenever we speak and we make choices and we formulate intentions, it can change the resonance of our DNA because our DNA responds to our language. Well, the same is true of other galactic cultures. The Pleiadians, their DNA responds to the Pleiadian language. As they consciously evolve and they assimilate more light and knowledge and have experiences, their DNA records that, and it records it in such a way that it becomes accessible to them through language. And it is also that the DNA records their use of their own language. It's because DNA is a language, and it's also designed to vibrate with living information as a record-keeping source. So the genetic codes that we have that came from other sources also contain a resonance of galactic languages. So we have a little bit of the Saryon language, the Pleiadian language, the reptilian language as a hidden record in our DNA. The vocabulary, the words, the meanings, the codes of consciousness that are part of those civilizations are inside of us. And so it's like having a whole library of information that we are connected to. And it's more that these bodies of knowledge that exist in the galaxy, like, for example, the Pleiadians, massive, massive body of knowledge that connects many different living worlds together. And because we have a little piece of that genetically, because we are related to them genetically, having a piece of it is like having a doorway into an entire system of knowledge energetically that we can tap into. Now, there is another aspect of galactic DNA, and it is that galactic DNA also refers to higher forms of DNA that are not biological in nature. And here we are talking about multidimensional structures of memory that have to do with the way in which all of our souls are connected as a collective to higher councils and to other collectives and to ways in which many different families of consciousness are all linked together into one vast tree of life that, you know, every civilization is like a leaf on a vast cosmic tree of life. So there is a form of multidimensional DNA. People talked about 12-strand DNA, and I'm not going to go into that subject right now, but that's essentially what we're talking about. We're talking about a multidimensional form of DNA that is beyond galactic. There's a universal component to this. But as it is switching on, we become aware of the galactic level of ourselves in terms of our connection to the galaxy as a whole. Now, having codes of DNA, galactic DNA that comes from specific sources like the Pleiadians or the Saryans, that makes it easier for us to expand in our consciousness and discover forms of multidimensional DNA inside of us that encompass all of that and beyond. So there's galactic DNA that comes from specific sources, but sometimes when we're talking about galactic DNA, we're talking about a connection to galactic memory that encompasses all races and all civilizations in this galaxy. So, for example, the Arcturians supported me once to see the living memory of the ascension on their worlds. And that happened through my galactic DNA, but I don't have Arcturian DNA. This is a form of galactic DNA that is coming online, that is partly stimulated by our connection to things like our Pleiadian cousins, but it goes well beyond that. So I'm going to take a look at some other questions here. Thanks for chiming in, guys. I love everything that you guys are saying. Lots of people from really all over. And I love that there's so much resonance in this group. So let's see some other questions here. Can we access this knowledge within us through the Akashic records? We are homeopathic reptilians. Yes, I've actually often thought about this. So thanks for sharing that, because yes, it's almost like we have a homeopathic amount of reptilian consciousness. It's not much, but you only need a tiny bit to link you in with the entire system of knowledge that the reptilians now are a part of. So yeah, that's fun. Yes, Akashic records. Now, when we talk about the Akashic records, we're talking about the sum total of all the knowledge and memory of everything. And yet, there are specific places that are like memory portals upon the earth, for example, that have been used as storehouses of memories that can kind of connect us in with specific forms of records, that which I would just call living records. And those living records are, of course, a part of the Akashic records. But sometimes having a memory portal to connect into it makes it easier than just trying to connect in with the vast sea of what's out there, which we can do. However, there are also many tools and aids for tapping into the sum total of galactic or of Akashic records. And our bodies are perhaps the greatest tool. So a lot of times when people tap into the Akashic records, they're actually tapping into the records in their own body. They're reading the records of their DNA, because DNA contains the record of everything that's happened upon the earth up until this point, including other versions of Earth and parallel realities. And we can read from those records. So if the Akashic records is the sum total of everything, then our DNA is a portion of that. And it is a starting point or a reference point to the sum total. But it's still usually the place that our consciousness accesses first when we are looking for records about things. Now, there are also various tools that we can connect with that can help us to access what is in our DNA. And one of those is what has been called the Book of Life, or the living Bible of humanity. It is a living symbol of a book that tells the story of humanity's DNA. And we all have a connection to this living Bible of our multidimensional DNA. It's a living symbol that was created and formulated to give us access so that it could become easy for us to start to discover what's in our DNA, because the idea of like reading the records of your DNA, I mean, that's like kind of abstract. Like, who knows how to do that? What does that look like? Well, imagine that it can be just like opening a book and reading from a holographic story that comes to life in your awareness and begins to project images into your mind as you're reading. So this book of living light is a divine gift that was given to us that we can access within ourselves. And you can begin to connect with this, because as you hold a 1-1 vibration with humanity, the 1-1 vibration is the key that unseals the book. When you're in a 1-1 vibration with humanity, that it unseals the book and opens it inside of you, unlocking your DNA. And the key to that is not just the 1-1 vibration, but to bring in the emotional element of it. It's love. It's the love of one humanity. That is what opens the book and opens the records. And if you need help accessing that, then the Master Jesus was actually the first being that I know of that was able to open the records of the multidimensional DNA, at least in, what we might think of as modern times, in the last, tens of thousands of years, or in more recent times. And so he modeled our potential to open the book. And it was because he was able to hold a vibration of love for all human beings that became part of the energy of the book itself. So that all we need to do is align with the love of one humanity that he embodied, and it unseals the book. Of course, there are many different masters that and guides and angels that bring to us that same energy of divine love. But the Master Jesus in particular modeled and demonstrated this part of the ascension process and our awakening. And so there are certain gifts that we will receive directly from him that relate to opening the records of our DNA. I'm going to take a look at some more questions. One person asked, why are there different races? So I would need to know, are you talking about galactic races, human races? If it's a question of why are there different human races, I would first say that there aren't. There's only one human race. We eventually will not think of there being different races, like, an Asian race and a black race and a white race and whatever. That is a way that the earth doesn't perceive it that way. Our higher selves don't perceive it that way. There's only one human race. But if the question is, why are there these different ethnicities? The earth evolved with us the diversity that we are as human beings. The earth was a conscious participant in creating the many different environmental conditions and situations historically and in terms of the evolutionary scale of humanity's journey to produce a very wide variation. And human beings were given DNA that was very adaptive and were very intelligent, and our bodies are able to adapt to different living conditions. And so this created a diversity because humanity was meant to transcend racism. Racism is one of the great lessons that humanity itself took on collectively so that we could master that particular platform for learning before we expanded into becoming a full galactic race and going and traveling to other systems of reality. So racism is one thing that we wanted to make sure we transcended before we went off to influence other races, because we didn't ever want to view ourselves as superior and create karma once we got out there in the galaxy. So you have to think really, really large scale. And this is the wonderful thing about our awakening, is that we can now do that in a way that our ancestors couldn't. Probably most of your parents never thought in such a large scale of history as we can now begin to do. So think of it this way. You have to think of time differently and to allow your orientation to time to shift so that we're going back and forth and we're looking at the present and the past from the future. So if we wanted to make sure that as a galactic race, we didn't create karma in the universe and we just helped other civilizations awaken, then we want to not view ourselves as superiors. And that means we want to become very humble. And that means we want to transcend any form of racism. And so working backward in time, we realized that we needed to be very diverse so that we would have experiences of prejudice and racism and experience the inequality, the injustice, and also be infused with teachings about overcoming oppression and our potential for equality so that we would eventually discover the genetic truth of our oneness. And we would purge these elements of racism and fear and prejudice from the human genome. Our genes would no longer have a resonance to these old forms of identification where people identify with race or ethnicity. It's a resonance in our DNA. Eventually it'll be cleared, and we are doing the work now to clear it. So let's keep doing that clearing work. It's really important. So were the Arcturians the ancient races that became the inner Earth civilizations? Are they still here? As far as I know, no. I don't believe that the Arcturians have had that kind of a presence on the Earth in our inner Earth civilizations. There have been inner Earth civilizations that are very ancient. I don't know where they came from. They were humanoid in nature, but they came from long before any of the modern human civilizations that we are a part of. And they're a mystery. Some of them created some of the tunnels that still exist down there. But the ones that currently exist came from the from the Atlantean and Lemurian civilizations. And there are also families of consciousness that have lived inside the Earth that are not as dense as we are. They're a higher vibration. There are all kinds of realities inside the Earth beyond what most people can imagine. When you get into beyond 4D and you're at a higher vibration, there are all kinds of realities that exist independently inside the Earth that are not connected with our layers of density at all, and very little communication between these levels. And these realities are quite a fascinating mystery. You know, how long have they been there and what role do they play? It's a fascinating mystery. I've been given a glimpse into some of those civilizations that are not human, but live within the Earth. And they seem to me almost more like, nature spirit type beings, the realms of fairies and devas and things like that. But no, I don't think the Arcturians have been there in that way. The Arcturians, I don't know how long the Arcturians have been observing the Earth, but they come from outside of time. So they really could have arrived at any point and traveled back in time and interacted with us throughout our history. So again, we have to really expand in our awareness of time to be able to understand or comprehend the way some of these civilizations relate to time and how they have related to us through time. Is there such a thing as activating our DNA, such as our Pleiadian DNA? Is there a method to do that? Okay, thank you for this question. Excellent question. Is there a method? Well, my personal experience with this, guys, is that we don't need a method to do this as if, this is something we need to figure out how to do, because it's something that just happens because it's time, because it's part of our evolutionary process. So because we have DNA from the Pleiadians, for example, When it is time for humanity to experience the opening and activation of a bridge of consciousness with the Pleiadians, then the Pleiadian ships will come closer to us. And it's like that scene in Indiana Jones in the Temple of Doom, where he has these stones that have the diamonds inside that glow when they get closer together. Well, these galactic codes inside of us, they kind of glow and they activate when we are in closer proximity to the civilizations that we got these codes from. So that's one of the things that happens when we experience contact with the Pleiadians, for example. If their ships come, we actually have an experience of feeling a connection to their energy through our bodies in a profound way. We're not just affected by their presence because their presence is so strong, but our bodies respond. The codes of consciousness there respond. So that is how the activation of our Pleiadian DNA or reptilian DNA or Saryon DNA or anything happens. It happens to a great degree through contact. And that's not something that we need to plot out or figure out how to do that or when or what method or anything, because it's just a natural part of the process. For many years, I've had experiences of noticing the galactic DNA coming online because it was time and because a form of contact happened that caused that to open up more. So what you can do is you can set your field of intention and you can say, yes, I choose my role as a galactic integrator, and I am open to receive the revelation of our potential to enter a 1-1 vibration with humanity and to simultaneously connect with our Pleiadian and Arcturian and Saryon brothers and sisters, and the Orions for that matter, the fifth dimensional reptilians for that matter, all manner of civilizations that love and respect human sovereignty, that are willing to meet us in a 1-1 vibration. If you set your field of intention and say yes to the 1-1 vibration, then that is going to key you into whatever the time frame is and whatever the process is of activating your galactic DNA, whatever form of DNA that is. Now, I know some people have done kind of galactic DNA work, and maybe they have actually put together certain kinds of meditations and recordings you can listen to and visualizations, and that can play a role in triggering memory, in activating ancient memories and restoring them and bringing them up to the surface, and that can play a role. So some of you may feel guided to the work that other people are doing specifically to stimulate these ancient memories that are bubbling up to activate our DNA. So that's one of the ways that happens. It happens through choosing it, through just receiving and taking in information and awareness that resonates with or reflects back to us some of what is in these codes of consciousness. Now, I would also say, in terms of the techniques, it's just coming to me that working with sound is a really, really profound way to support your DNA to link up with other hidden structures of your multidimensional DNA and the various guides that want to work with you. So, for example, I work a lot with these crystal bowls and sacred sound, for example. I use this as toning and use crystal bowls to create sacred ceremony, to create a meditative environment for the groups of people that I work with. And I love using sound as a multidimensional bridge, because sound does not just resonate out spatially, it resonates dimensionally. And it creates a dimensional bridge that higher forms of consciousness can use to work with us. So when you work with sound, whether it's toning with intention or working with sacred instruments, that is how you can create a multidimensional portal so that you can receive the frequencies of light that want to come in and activate you, whatever they may be, whether it's galactic or angelic or whatever it is. Okay, so lots of questions here. Hi, I've had a few nighttime visits lately where I've woken up with different beings suffused with my being. Is this part of integration to wholeness, or me experiencing galactic aspects of myself, or something else? Wow, very cool. I would love to discuss sometime, maybe in another class, people's experiences and what they're actually having happen. So I have had many experiences just like what you're describing. Sometimes it like happens in a flurry where a whole bunch of different things happen all in one night. I had one time where probably, 70 different groups of ETs all showed up in very quick succession and were infusing into me. And they said my galactic DNA was activating, and they were all coming just like I described this procession of beings that came and blessed the original 2 human hybrids that were part of the original human starseed project. That is continuing to happen to activate our galactic DNA. So I want to answer this question a little bit in parallel to something somebody else asked about: can you receive more than one walk-in per lifetime? And the answer is yes. You can have a walk-in guide that comes and is there for a while and then leaves, and then you may have another one come in at a different time for a period of time, and maybe one stays with you for the rest of your life. Maybe that one leaves as well after a period of time. You can have walk-in guides that some of them may even be very short walk-in experiences in duration. Some of them last for many, many years. Some of them are there to help us get through hard times, and some of them come in because there is a shared mission. I mentioned that some walk-ins have come in and they are really trying to educate us about consciousness, but I've seen walk-ins that have come here that are politicians that are trying to shift consciousness by bringing new consciousness into politics. So people are operating as walk-ins on all levels, in all areas of life, to bring in higher levels of consciousness to every aspect of what needs to evolve. So coming back to this question, is this part of galactic integration into wholeness? Yes. And I would say that if you always bring it back to the energy of wholeness, and you see that there is a seed of wholeness inside of you that wants to integrate humanity into a vibration of wholeness that is centered in Christ consciousness, and that wants to eventually integrate the galactic community into a vibration of wholeness and equality with you, then that is always at the center of these experiences. So whether experience is pleasant or a little frightening or throws you off a little bit, whatever it is, it's all part of integrating all these energies into wholeness, and us realizing that we have been given roles as integrators that is very, very profound in this galaxy. We are playing a role to be integrators in a way that most other civilizations that we're dealing with have not been given this type of role. They are seeking to access a portal to galactic integration through us, because we are the ones that have come here to model this. We are the melting pot. We are the ones that have received all of these seedings from different ET races over many, many thousands of years, and that go back to the very, very beginning, the very first ceremony of blessing our potential for galactic integration. And I want to leave you with that, since we're now at the completion of our time together, that if you identify with yourself as an integrator, a galactic integrator, an integrator of light, that is where you will begin to find a new stream of guidance about who we are as human beings and what we are capable of. So allow the vibration of wholeness, as it is arising from within the earth and is supported by the earth, and allow yourself to connect in with that Earth First consciousness, to become sovereign as a guardian of the earth, to assume the sacred powers of the earth, and to master the focus of equality and focusing into a 1-1 vibration with our human family, so that we can accelerate the spread of this vibration of wholeness and oneness in a way that continually activates more of our potential to be integrators of all that is present, that is seeking integration through us. We are the masters. We are the emerging master integrators that are going to be able to represent and model a whole new potential for all beings in this galaxy to become integrated with a love vibration. You have to always bring it back to love. So thank you all for tuning in. I'm so glad that we got to have this time together. Thanks to Neil and the Portal to Ascension network. Thank you for showing up and participating. I love all of your questions, and yeah, let's keep meeting up like this and keep journeying together. And if you really want to take your discernment regarding the extraterrestrial presence and the kind of stuff we need to watch out to, if you really want to take your discernment to the next level and continue to evolve the way in which you think and speak and understand what is happening, I highly, highly, highly recommend getting a copy of Roya Sands and the Bridge Between Worlds. This contains a new galactic teaching. It is a revealed channel teaching that went into the form of an exciting adventure story and fiction book. And I cannot more highly recommend this. I'm not recommending it just because it's my book. I received this as a teaching myself, and it changed me to receive it as a channeled work of fiction. So, of course, it's more than fiction. It's beyond fiction. And it's also everything that we are integrating with right now in the form of a fiction story. So thank you all for tuning in. Many blessings to all of you. And I look forward to continuing to do more events like this with the Portal to Ascension. All right, see you guys.